Benglish books, Srijato and Konkona have agreed to do the honors. Benglish Books is an initiative to reach out to those readers, young readers, for whom Bengali is is an understood and spoken language, but not a read or written language. So this is the first initiative of its kind, which transliterates Bengali in the Roman script for children of the SMS generation. I would like to also invite Indrani Roy Mitro, if she is here, on behalf of Mitro and Ghosh, to take the dais. Okay, she's not here with us today, but Konkona and Srijato, if you would kindly hold the books up for... Oh, okay, Indrani is trapped in that corner. I'm sorry. Benglish books, ladies and gentlemen. We have, for the time being, the books are divided into coloring books, Hashi Khushi and Shahojpat, and gift books, Hashi Khushi, Shahojpat, and Abul Tabul. These are iconic works of Bengal, primers which at least our generation grew up with, but the current generation probably aren't growing up with. And this is an effort to reach out to them in order to convey to them the beauty and the simplicity of basic Bengali. Thank you. Thank you, Srijato Konkona. Konkona, I think you should sort of just remain. Yes, might as well. Renu di, welcome. Renu Roy. Thank you. Thank you. Over to Renu di now.
Good evening to all of you. At the outset, I would like to thank and congratulate Kolkata Literary Meet, the Tata Steel Kolkata Literary Meet, and especially Malavika Banerjee and her entire team for organizing this most magnificent, most important, significant, and successful literary festival, which has been wonderfully patronized by thousands of Kolkatans. And in the same breath, I would like to welcome Konkona Sen Sharma, our very own Konkona, to her very own city of joy. Konkona's most recent achievement has been Death in the Gunj. And I just like to know, for interest's sake, how many of you have seen the film? Oh, that's almost 89%. Great, that's wonderful. As all of you know, the film received 3 major Filmfare Awards recently. I think it was on the 22nd. 20th, all right. Konkona, before I go on, and this is important, that I want to tell you how much of a privilege and honor it is to have you here. Thank you for being a part of this conversation. And I have seen Konkona born, and I just feel terribly proud, just like each one of you, that one of our very own has now hit not only national but international headlines. So I was talking about the Filmfare Awards. The best debut director has been bagged by Konkona. The Filmfare Award for the best cinematographer went to Shishore who did an absolutely marvelous job. And the best costume designer went to Rohit Chaturvedi. And this was 3 major awards out of 7 nominations. And this really adds a very big feather to Konkona's rich and wonderful repertoire of awards, Filmfare Awards, national awards, several international awards. And with Death in the Gunj, Konkona, who is an acclaimed, established, acknowledged, extremely talented and accomplished actor on the Indian screen, makes a quantum leap to go on to becoming a filmmaker, a director in her own right. A little bit about the film. Of course, Konkona, I'll hand it over to Konkona. I wouldn't want to come in your way. A film which actually is based on a story by your father, Mukul Sharma, who is a senior journalist and a science fiction writer. It's actually a 4-page story, but inspired by true events and something that has been a part of Konkona's life as an anecdote. She grew up with the story. And Konkona Sen, Konkona's mother, owned a house in Gunj, which I've had the privilege to visit in the 70s. And the story is about this sleepy little town where a group of friends go and visit friends and relatives over a Christmas vacation. And it's all about what happens there. So we have today Konkona handling a film with great confidence. This film, I'm sure all of you will agree, the cinematography is exquisite, the script is tight, the performances are brilliant, the music and background score is really evocative too, and a film about you and me and ordinary people, ordinary everyday events handled in such a unique manner. So the question, my first question, Konkona, is that how did you feel about making a story which is actually just a 4-page story into a full-length feature film? What drove you to do that?
First of all, I want to say thank you so much for such a warm and generous introduction. And I'm so happy to be here. It's the first time that I'm attending this literary festival, and so heartening to see so many of you here. And I believe it's been a great success and very well attended. And so happy that so many of you have watched the film. As Renu Mashi said, she's seen Death in the Gunj is a 4-page short story. Even though it's a 4-page short story, I think for me it kind of encapsulates my childhood in many ways. It encapsulates an era that has gone by. I never read it as a short story. You see, I only heard it told. I had heard the story told again and again by my father. He's a wonderful storyteller, and he tells very warm and funny stories, and some of them sometimes are slightly creepy or chilling, and he likes to scare me and scare himself also. So he tells these stories, and because my mother used to own this house in Gunj, and because they used to go very often, I've heard a lot of stories from that time. And various anecdotes, family anecdotes, and so it's not just a 4-page short story to me. It's really spilled over, and having heard it again and again from the people who actually went through those experiences, what happens is that they imbue it with a lot of emotion. So that's why I say it in a sense it's an era gone by. It's like my childhood. It's probably a time that I have romanticized in my head. To a certain extent. I've always found Gunj, the very name, very magical. One of my earliest memories of Gunj is being woken up at 4 in the morning by my mother saying, "Utho, utho, Konkona, Gunj jete hobe." You know, otherwise it's difficult to wake up early in the morning. I used to love those long drives. And whenever I heard those stories, I always felt very left out because I felt I was too young to really enjoy the fun. I mean, I've seen photographs of you guys and others over there, and I've heard such wonderful stories, and I've always felt that I really couldn't participate. So I had to make it for myself.
Great, but what was so compelling about this story? Why did this story in particular resonate with you for you to want to make this as your debut film?
You know, this story actually fascinated me for a long
Tell us
time.
a little bit about the story.
Okay.
I mean, for those who may not.
Yeah, I just don't want to focus too much on you know, the real life incidents, because you know, there were so many of them involved, and I've fictionalized so much of it, and I have brought my own experiences and my own memories into it so much that it's not really exactly that story anymore. I've taken a lot of liberties. So, but it did happen that they used to go there like this, and you know, it was a very sleepy small town, and you know, the whole entire Anglo-Indian community that was that had founded that not city, that village really in 1933. It was founded by E.T. McCluskey, but I think by the 70s and 80s it was kind of all over. In the sense that you know, it was in decay. There was not a lot of much like the protagonist, and much like the you know, Anglo-Indian community. These people didn't really have a sense of belonging, like a permanent sense of belonging. A lot of the Anglo-Indian community actually left and migrated to Canada and to Australia, especially after independence. And Shutu, who's the protagonist, also I feel is a character like that, who finds it hard to find a place to belong to. So the original story, what I've heard amongst many stories, is that they all went together somewhere, and they decided to scare this little boy, not little boy, this young chap, and with a fake planchette. And they prophesied, you know, who would die first, and they were very cruel to him in a fun kind of a way. And they said, let's really scare this fellow, and let's see you know, what we can do. And it's not even, it's very common. I've come across other groups of people who do this. I mean, it's a common thing, you know, this kind of group dynamics I find quite fascinating. And they all conspire to basically scare him. I don't know why, except maybe it will make them feel more powerful. And I just found it fascinating that this boy actually fulfilled this fake prophecy, because they made a fake prophecy of saying that this boy is going to die first. And I'm of course giving away the entire story here, but eventually he fulfills that fake prophecy, and I found that structure very fascinating. In the actual story, in the actual story, it happens I think over a year, but for the purposes of, you know, drama, I collapsed it to a week.
Okay, you know, the story definitely, Konkana's film definitely goes beyond the original 4-page story written by Mukul. And she's obviously had to flesh out a lot of characters, fictionalize a lot, put in her own experiences. And the film, if you have seen it, is a lot about laughter and fun and merriment and sexuality, and at the same time juxtaposed with you know, this grim, dark undertone, this haunting, melancholic quality. And then in the middle of it, we have the brand of bullies and exploiters and machismos. So could you tell us a little bit about how you felt, you know, from the outside, objectively, about those who exploit? Shutu, who is the protagonist, is constantly exploited. He's vulnerable, he's grieving, he's lonely. So, did you make a study of bullies, or were you were you bullied yourself at any time for it to be transferred so realistically and so convincingly, Konkona?
I was bullied. I was bullied. What can I say? I have experienced cruelty in my childhood. I was bullied. I mean, not I think very severely, though I felt it quite you know, intensely at the time. But I was bullied in school. I was bullied in my building as well, and I was a very quiet, I think, a fairly quiet and withdrawn child. And I used to read a lot, and I think be on my own a lot. I'm not very sure, but I.
did that kind of remain with you? Was it like a hurt that you had nursed, or did you go?
No, you see what happens is it allows you to be invisible. So that's great because then you can see what's going on. You know, it's very interesting to see how certain people are allowed certain things and other people are not allowed to say some things, but some people can get away with saying some things. Some people get away with certain kinds of action. We condone some and we don't condone others. And what is this power that some people have? And just kind of wanted to examine that a little bit. Why are some people invisible?
Why are some people invisible? I see, that's very interesting. And also the fact that they become vulnerable to this casual cruelty, you know, which I think all of us are capable of. Do you talk about casual cruelty? I mean,
Yeah.
I think it's something that...
It's very scary because it's kind of a half joke, you know what I mean? But feelings, I think, often we don't realize how much we affect other people's lives and how other people are affected by our actions and our behavior. I wanted, you know, in a sense, I think people identify a lot with the protagonist, Shutu, and they also feel that there is some part of themselves in them. And that's probably true. We all have a certain aspect of that in ourselves. But we also have a lot of the other characters. I wanted also the other characters to be fun and appealing because nobody is really a villain. I mean, it's just to say that this is the kind of setup that we have. And this is what we are okay with, and this is the kind of harm we're causing, you know. And what happens to people also when they don't want to, when they don't conform to certain ideals of manhood or womanhood or just how one is supposed to behave at certain times. Shutu doesn't always conform, and I think that is perceived maybe as a threat to the others because he's not really exactly fitting in as he's supposed to.
Just as much as the others are a threat to him, perhaps. I mean,
just as much. Yeah.
From his point of view.
I think that if Shutu had, you know, I think that he would have, if he had given himself more time, I think he would have eventually been able to. I mean, I placed Shutu very much within myself. I mean, I clearly feel that I am Shutu.
Really.
Yes.
Yeah, because
it's me.
It's, you feel Shutu is you. That's really...
I mean, a lot of myself is in all the characters, but particularly in Shutu.
So you feel protective about him? Do you feel...
I actually don't see any of the characters as villains. I mean, I don't see Mimi, played by Kalki, as necessarily like a sly seductress as I have heard her described. I mean, I do see her for her frailties, for her vulnerabilities, and basically you have to see everyone in context. So nobody's, or people who you think are actually a hero are not. At times of crisis, many times, you know, like your true character will come out. And you see that with Nandu's character, when he kind of lashes out. And every now and then, actually, Nandu's character, who seems such an affable and amiable and agreeable kind of fellow, and he is also all of those things. And we are often, so many contradictions we contain. But he is also the one who lashes out at his wife Bonnie. He's also the one who gives this kind of a very cruel driving lesson to Shutu. I have seen very often men teaching, you know, women or younger men to drive, and it can be they can be quite aggressive. I've experienced that myself, in fact. Yeah.
Okay, so the central character Shutu, who has been brilliantly essayed by Vikrant Massey. You've of course spoken about him, but would you be able to? Would you tell us how much time you spent with him? For example, in bringing out his character, you're telling him about your perspective, and you know, making him do what he really produced on screen. Tell us about the time you spent with him.
Yes, has to go to Vikrant Massey himself because he's such a wonderful actor. I saw him in Lutera, where he played the hero's best friend, and I was just aghast because I thought, I mean, how fantastic is this actor, and it's so sad that he's so underutilized. And I had marked him in my head at that time. And then, of course, we were both acting in Lipstick Under My Burqa, though we were not in the same stories. But even in that, he was very good. I'd heard from the director. And we actually I somehow had this confidence that he would be able to do it. And even when I finally found producers who agreed to back the film, because several others didn't, I told them that, you know, I specifically want this boy to play this part. And we we had a lot of discussions, we did a lot of readings, we did some improvisations. We had a fantastic workshop with Atul Mongia.
Yes, tell us a little more about the workshop too, I mean, along with this particular.
You know, Atul Mongia, who did the workshop, actually, we used to go and rehearse every evening. I think for 2 weeks we all went to rehearse, and he made the room very cold so that we would get that McCluskey Gunj winter feeling, and he'd ask us to get our jackets and things like that. And he made them do scenes before and after the actual scene, or sometimes just, you know, trying to do a scene which will bring out a certain emotion, even if it's not actually in the text, and improvise other scenes. And also for all of them to really get to know each other, because in the film they're all supposed to be very close and have known each other for many years, if not all their lives. So to get that kind of feeling of camaraderie going.
So did they, I mean, did this also spill off the screen? Were they a very cohesive, friendly lot, and gave you trouble, or were you, were you
a
also
rowdy
part
bunch.
of rowdy bunch?
Yeah. They were quite boisterous and rowdy. I stayed away from them, by and large. led by, of course, Omji, who's fantastic, and we miss him so much, and Tanuja. And the
Also
rest
help
of them,
you to keep your sanity, I'm sure.
I just stayed away, yeah, because they were having too much fun. It looked like they were having fun.
But I'm sure that helped in, you know, creating these very real characters. None of them are standing around and delivering stuffy lines. They all look like characters that are in ordinary everyday situations. I mean, that was a huge achievement, the performances which you managed to bring out. And
They're all wonderful performers. I can't take any credit.
Of course, your casting was spot on, you know. I believe that you were very fastidious, and even Kalki Kochlin had to audition twice. I mean, an actor, an award-winning actor like her had to audition
because,
twice.
You know, she looks very young. I actually wanted somebody who looks older than Vikrant, and so I had actually him read with a few actors, and all of them look very young. And this was, of course, in '79, where, you know, a 35-year-old is today is maybe 40 or 45-year-old. So I wanted that, you know, so I wanted to just make sure we can get that. So that's why we had to do it with Kalki a few times, not because she's excellent.
You know, a lot has been you've been complimented a lot on the atmospherics of the film, the mood, the tone, the look, the feel, and this quality of being able to transport one from here right into the 70s. So in a way, it's a pre-period film. So how, I mean, you knew what you wanted, it seems, and how did you manage to create this spot-on 70s look?
Actually, that was the most fun. I think it was the most fun to create the world. Actually, from our minds to, you know, in reality, to create that world. So there were 7 drafts of the script itself. There was a lot of research that went into the script. I had a wonderful associate, Disha Rindani. We did a lot of research and looked at a lot of photographs, and this is what is interesting, is that there's not a lot of archival material just available on what McCluskey Gunj was like in the 70s. In fact, we had a scene where there's a telephone conversation in the house, because in Calcutta or in Delhi you could have had a phone in the late 70s, but you wouldn't have had it in McCluskey Gunj. So I had to rewrite that into that wonderful post office sequence, which actually turned out so nice.
Yes,
you know, these really restrictions really help, yeah, and they bring out even more flavor and authenticity. I think it really helped that we actually were able to shoot in McCluskey Gunj, because, like I said, that is a place that time has forgotten. It has stood still. We've actually used so many artifacts, furniture, and just like pieces from families still living there. And the people of McCluskey Gunj were so amazing and so generous and shared all of this with us. And I found actually, yeah, this is what I was saying, is that memory is a very unreliable thing, because sometimes I'd ask because it's not like a lot of information is available online, so I'd have to, you know, ask people constantly, and every day there'd be more questions. Every day I'd call my mother, every day I'd call her, if not twice a day. My father also, and I used to have a list of questions to ask them. my sister, who's 10 years older than me, who would remember more things, and even some others. But the thing is that they didn't always agree with each other. So my mother would say, yeah, it was like this. Then my father would say, no, it was like that. And my sister would say, no, I remember something else. So it's very
You had to rely on other
lines.
people's memories. But it had this very, very colonial look. I mean, obviously there were these many Anglo-Indian families. So you got help from there too?
We got a lot of help. I was actually able to recognize, as soon as I...
Inputs in by way of what was happening in that time. I mean, basically you had a concentrate of Anglo-Indian families there in McCluskey,
Yes,
Gunj,
so
right?
it was started, I think 350 Anglo-Indian families. They'd taken lots of land from the Ratu Maharaj of Bihar, I think, and they founded in 1933. And then, so they were the pioneer families fighting the wild animals. But I think they expected them to be an agrarian family, and I don't think that community was apparently essentially cut out for agriculture. And at a time, of course, they flourished briefly, and I think there were, they used to call it mini London, and the weather was very nice, and they used to have badminton competitions and rose garden competitions, and it was all very idyllic for a while. But what about the people from there? Like the Adivasis of that place? As we tried to show in the film also. I mean, it's because they really carved out the space forcibly on, a place where, which was peopled by the Oraunis, and the Chota Nagpuri people. And of course the local Biharis, some Bengalis. It was a very interesting mix of people at that time. And the Anglo-Indians were kind of thrust upon them. And then eventually they left, and so many families left that actually there are many houses there now which are decrepit and in ruins, and the caretakers, the Adivasi caretakers of those families, are actually living in those homes now still, and they're really like hovels, some of them. I could recognize the first time I went back after 30 years for my location recce, and I could recognize houses from just the research and the photographs that we'd seen.
So you must have been very small.
I think the last time I went there, I must have been 6 or 7.
6 or 7 only, okay. Because I think I went there before you were born with your mother. So, this has really becomes period now. Also, tell me, how was it, yes, before that, did you ever think of Apurna in Tanuja's role? Did you think of casting her at all at any point of time? Because, I mean, that might have been the obvious choice.
Yes.
In our minds,
no,
at
I
least.
didn't. I didn't. I mean, it did occur to me, but I actually was looking for a very different kind of a figure, in the sense that I had modeled Anupama Bakshi, the character, on my paternal grandmother, Radhe Rani, who actually is very much like Tanuja. So when my casting director, cum producer Hani Trehan, suggested Tanuja, it was amazing, because I found I wanted
Tanuja
to
didn't
cast.
occur to you spontaneously?
No, actually,
okay.
she didn't. She
So
didn't, because she'd been out of circulation, I think, for a while. But I wanted to cast, against type to a certain extent, like women, like that Tilottama is a mother. I mean, many times you'd expect a more matronly kind of a figure to be depicted as a mother. But, all mothers don't look the same, and I wanted to have a different representation of that. I wanted the grandmother to be different as well. Yeah. She was based on my grandmom, who used to have short hair and drive and smoke, and just didn't probably have time for all her guests and things like that, and a bit fed up. So I'd modeled her on that.
And what about Om Puri? How, a veteran like Om Puri, and I think it's probably one of his last films before he passed away. How did you find the experience of directing these two stalwarts?
It was fantastic. Omji just made everything so normal. He was so supportive right from the get-go, and he immediately read the script and he said he likes it very much and he wants to be part of it. And that's it. He was very casual and informal about the whole thing, and even on set he was like that, and constantly making fun of me. Dekho aa gayi, and he'd mimic me, and keep the atmosphere very light and easy on set.
And what about yourself? Did you not think of being in the film as part of the cast? I know it was a very major responsibility and mantle that you took on, but did you ever think at any point?
Not at all.
No, never.
Not at all. No. It was so liberating to be behind the camera. And
but if you had, what role would you have done?
Luckily, I had such good actors that I didn't have to. If I could have, I would have done show too.
You would have done Shutu. Oh, wonderful.
I mean, a female shoot.
Yeah, of course. And the about the film, about your proximity to your mother, gave you the advantage of discussing things with her about the film, the process, the logistics, the aesthetics. So that must have been a big advantage. Did you spend a lot of time with Aparna and Mukul, or Aparna or Mukul, both?
Both, actually.
Because this was your debut film, and you know, perhaps inputs would have been valuable.
Yes, absolutely invaluable, because, you know, I got it straight from the horse's mouth. And I had lots of questions for them because they were the witnesses, they were there at the time. Because it's at a specific time and a specific place, I actually started kind of really writing it and conceiving it at a time when I was living in Delhi with my dad, because our house in Bombay was being renovated. And that's the time when we actually started to flesh it out and write it out. So I had a lot of input from my dad. I was able to talk to him a lot. He had some ideas of how it should be because he'd lived with these experiences for so many years that he had his own. So sometimes we'd agree, sometimes we disagree. But I always knew that I wanted, you know, I wanted it to be about Shutu's story and of Shutu wanting to belong and not being able to, eventually.
And the film has elements of the supernatural, preternatural, metaphysical. So would you say that Mukul's scientific, I mean, many of his writings is, you know, is a mix of advanced scientific thought bordering on the metaphysical. Would this have influenced you in any way? I mean, and of course, Mukul, well, I was a very close friend of his, and we've lost touch over the years, but he had the world's best sense of humor. So the film also has a lot of that. Yeah. So tell me about your interest in the supernatural, suspense, the thriller genre, all of that.
You know, I get scared very easily. So
like you get startled.
I get startled easily, which I incorporate into Shutu's character, who also gets startled. I get scared easily. Sometimes at night when I would be writing on my desk and the window's right next to me, and because of the lamp, I could see my own reflection. Sometimes at like 2 in the morning, I would start feeling uncomfortable because I used to feel like Shutu's here with me. So so then I thought it's a good sign. If I'm getting scared, then hopefully it will translate and other people will also get scared. So I tend to get scared easily, but I also wanted to play around a little bit and give the impression that this could be something supernatural, it could be something paranormal, but it depends so much on the viewer's own mindset, because actually it's not. And we very clearly show that actually, because the thread and the planchette, the prank is very clearly shown that it's not. But it's fun little bit to mess with people's minds and, you know, expect something but go somewhere else. I think that's enjoyable.
But in general, are you interested in the thriller genre, the suspense, the mystery stories? I mean, in this film, it seems as though you are.
I think I'm generally interested in things which are unexplored, uncomfortable, dark. Yeah, generally I am. I mean, if everything's bright and happy, then it's a little boring.
Did you feel you were taking a risk with, you just mentioned the film was dark, a film with dark undertones, something that is, you know, something about to happen, something in the realm of foreboding. Did you feel that for your first film out, with, you know, the box office, the way it goes, that this would be a bit of a risk in risk-taking, where cinema is concerned, popular cinema?
Yes, I mean, when I was writing it, excuse me. You want a glass? No, this water. When I was writing it, I didn't think that too many people would actually, I didn't even think that it would necessarily get made. I didn't think it would necessarily get made. I didn't know that I would find the funds for it. I didn't realize that, and I knew that if anybody came, you know, forward to produce the film, it would have to be like-minded people.
Yeah,
so
sure.
there are some of us, there are few of us, but there are some of us, you know, who are interested in different kinds of content. I mean, I knew this was going to be a niche film. I knew that this is not going to be something that it's not everybody's cup of tea. But I wanted to pursue it because I personally found it interesting.
Right.
And I felt compelled to. I really felt compelled to. And I went to, many people, and many people, I went to some studios because, that's just the way to go about it. And my mother kept saying, you're just sitting on the script, you have to do something about it. And I went to some studios, and then it was rejected by at least 4 or 5 studios, which I was expecting. And, but the right people came along, Hani
Right.
Chehan and Abhishek Chaubey and iDreams, they came
Sure.
along. And of course, it's made with limited resources. Because it's not that kind of a film which will you're expecting to recover a lot of money, I guess. But I mean, these are things which we always knew. I mean,
Of course, most
even
certainly.
in many times in my acting career, I mean, I have done films which I knew
Yeah.
is not for everyone.
Yeah,
But you
but
do it because you
of
want
course.
to.
Of course. And of course, with your background, Konkona, with your grandfather um, being such a famous filmmaker, Opurna, you probably, India, you were stepping into another territory, had a lot of expectations from you. So did you feel the pressure of that expectation somehow, that a lot would be expected of you as a filmmaker? Or were you relaxed about it, more or less?
No, I didn't think about it too much. I didn't
Oh,
really
good.
let myself think about it too much. I just kind of let Shutu's story drive me.
Right.
And for a long time, I was very quiet about it. I mean, it's only when I really felt ready, to come out with it that I actually shared it with people. But I think if you start thinking about I was doing this because I found it interesting. But yeah, other people do, especially the media, does bring this up often.
Yes, of course. And what was it like directing Ranveer? Was he a good boy, or did he give you any trouble on Ranveer Shore? Yeah.
It was.
Were you comfortable?
I'll stick to director, actor kind of questions.
Yeah, questions. Okay.
But it was a great privilege to direct such a fine actor.
Yes, of course. He's a
I think he's one of the most
wonderful actor.
underrated actors, and such a fabulous actor, very generous actor as well. And I knew that he could actually do this so well. I had actually written it partly with him in mind. Shutu's character I had written with Vikrant in mind. Bonnie's character I partly wrote with Tilotoma in mind. And Vikram's character I wrote with Ranveer in mind. So I already knew. So it was kind of a given that they would do this, and I knew that all of them would do it so well.
That was really very nice, Konkona. I think it's time for us to take a few questions. But just before that, something that may be of interest to everybody. Do you feel that making art house, independent films in the alternative space, something that filmmakers have to struggle with? For example, do you feel that this is a bit of a problem?
Yes, I do. I think I was very lucky with my first film, but it's not a sustainable model. I mean, I'm in a huge position of privilege.
Yes.
Having been an actor, and my family also having been well known, so it was easy for me to meet people. It was easy for me to get meetings. Not that they agreed to make the film necessarily,
yeah.
but I also knew Hani and Abhishek because they were with Vishal Bharadwaj's team, and I knew them from Omkara time, from the time we did Omkara. So I was very lucky in that sense, and that iDreams wanted to, they had money, and after a long time they were putting money into a film. But I wonder what it will be like for my next film, or I wonder what it would be like
Yeah.
for somebody else who may not have been an actor before becoming a director. I don't think there is no model, there's no go-to model for this. It's so much, luck and goodwill and yeah.
And of course, the confidence of your own talent. So what are you thinking of as your next film, if you are thinking at all? I'm sure, because a lot of us hope and wish to see your next venture.
Yeah, thank you. But also, so many talented people actually don't get the recognition that they deserve. It's not a fair system at all. But having said that, I'm not really sure about my next film. I'm just only vaguely thinking about it in my head. I don't want to, just have to make a film every year. I want to take some time. and then hopefully do something worthwhile.
So we do look forward to much more creativity in terms of making films. We are running a little short of time. There were many, many more questions. And we'd like some from the audience. Please keep the questions short. It should be a question, not and also not personal. Thank you. Yes, yes, please. The mic.
Hello. Good evening.
Good
Like you rightly said that when you're writing the characters, the writer is often a bit of all the characters in the story. And later when you're directing the characters, for several things like light and all, a lot of decisions get changed on spot. So you're often torn between the writer and the director. So is it too much of a compromise, or you make peace with it eventually?
Well, to begin with, I'm fairly practical, and I think that those kind of considerations have to be taken if you have to finish making the film, with the limited resources and within a limited amount of time. You have to, consider those kind of things as well, and they are, they are so paramount to the film as a whole. But also, I think the advantage of being, a writer-director is that the what exactly has to come across, regardless of light or regardless of what happened or didn't happen. At least this feeling must come across by this scene, so that by that scene we can then meet it again. So I think if you're clear about some things, then that helps to dictate the choices you make.
Yes.
Good evening.
Yes, please.
What is your perception of masculinity?
Your perception of masculinity. Thank God
And
they
I'm
didn't
bringing
ask
up a little
me the
boy.
question.
I'm bringing up a little boy. So it's interesting you asked that.
yes.
I don't think I have any one notion of masculinity like that. I think I think patriarchy has its own issues, and I think that men and women both suffer from. I mean, men of course have a lot to gain, but I think men and women both suffer from it. In any case, from this kind of a system which is so unequal in its distribution of power. But masculinity in general is such a broad term that it can be so many things, and it's different, I think, for different men, and sometimes there can be a certain amount of masculinity within women as well. I think it's important to see human beings as individuals, by and large, and look for the common humanity in them rather than what is masculinity, or or what masculinity should be. I mean, I feel like it should be fluid, and it shouldn't be something that is taught to us so early of ways to be and how to think. That's the problem, I think.
Any other question? Maybe one or two more. Yes, the lady there, please. A very young girl. Quickly the mic, or if you have a loud enough voice.
Actually, my question is, characters usually evolve out of situations. So has there been a time when you had to change the character or the plot or the situation for the sake of the character, maybe?
No, I've not had to change the plot. Because the plot arises from the characters in a way. Because it's the way characters behave that leads to eventually, their behavior may lead eventually to plot, I think. I've had to sometimes change dialogue according to actors. Because on some people, some people can speak a certain way easily, and some people can't. Some lines sound comfortable with certain actors and may not with others. But I've not had to change the characters because the situations and the plot has arisen because these are the people they are, and that's why they are in the situations they are in.
Somebody from the back. Yes, the lady there. I really can't see you very well, but just say it without, I mean, the mic may take a little time. Try to hear you. Yeah, okay.
Hello, good evening. Good evening. Konkona, firstly, big fan. Thank you for coming here. I just have one question about your film. The ending sequence, I was a bit confused after watching it on the screen. So, what were you thinking at that point of time? I mean, is Shutu sitting on the back, like, is he thinking that I have died and these people are still not, thinking about me, or what was it exactly?
No, not at all. I think that there probably can be different interpretations, but for me, I mean, clearly Shutu died. and not Ranveer's character. I mean, Shutu was the one who put the gun to his face, to his throat, and he killed himself. What you see in the beginning and the end is, for me, just, you know, I long to see Shutu again. I wanted to see Shutu again because I feel like he was a much loved character. I mean, I was in love with that character and I wanted to see him again. And it is meant to be, you know, a presence. It's meant to be something between a ghost or a presence or a memory. Because those two who are driving in front, they are obviously thinking about him. And I just felt that it's visually very interesting to me to see, you know, he's going with his body because he doesn't know. And I don't think he fully understands himself what just happened over the last 1 week. So in a sense, it's just him reviewing the last 1 week because the whole film is in flashback. What happened? And I wanted to put it in the beginning and the end because, you know, when you see it in the beginning, you see it without context. And then, you know, when you see it in the end, you see it with context and meaning. And then, and hopefully that then becomes rich with meaning.
Just one more question because, yes, the lady in the white.
Yeah. Thank you. There.
Why did you choose to name the film A Death in the Gunj, which gives away the fact that there's going to be a death? And that brings me to my second question, that could this death be avoided? Because it was not necessary. I mean, the character could have evolved. Could there be a different ending?
Okay. So why A Death in the Gunj? Because, see, right in the beginning of the film, you know there's a dead body. So it's really not a suspense film like that. You know that somebody's died. You just don't know who or how, even though you're watching them all the time. So I didn't think it's giving anything away because if anything has to be given away, it's given away in the first scene. Which is why actually you don't see Ranveer's character in the beginning. Initially when I wrote it, I wrote that Ranveer and Gulshan's character are actually transporting the body. But then I realized that you'd realize that Ranveer didn't die. And I wanted to kind of, you know, while watching the film to have that sense of who died. And therefore I changed it to Jim and Gulshan, Brian and Nandu.
Can I follow up a question, please?
Yeah, but you still have one question left from earlier.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Please
Okay.
go on.
No, ask.
Oh, sure. You mean my previous question? I'm a little confused right
No,
now.
so I'll answer the previous question first. One is Death in the Gunj. I wanted
Could the
to
death
say.
have been
Yeah.
avoided?
No,
Yes.
yeah, I'll come to that. Also, Death in the Gunj because it's also called the Gunj that died, the Gunj that failed, because
Okay.
in a way, like there's death everywhere. It's winter, everything is it's browns, and you know there's a graveyard. The ant dies, and you know there's a dead moth, and you know there's death everywhere because it's the decaying of a community. It's the dying away of a particular way of life. It's the dying of that particular place. And could the death have been avoided is an interesting question because when we speak about suicide, you know, I don't think there's ever like a good reason for a suicide.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it's not like it's like, oh, he failed in his exams, that's why. It's fine. We understand.
Yeah.
Or that, oh, he was bankrupt and that's why he killed himself. It's okay, we understand. I don't think you can ever understand. I don't think it's ever a good enough reason in that sense. But there's, I mean, and the only thing we can do really is, you know, to be kind and empathetic to the people around us.
Yes.
So maybe the ending in the film couldn't be avoided. I don't think it could be avoided, and that's often the reality. But we can, you know, change ourselves or at least examine our own behavior.
Yeah, definitely. So can I follow up another question, please?
I'm afraid that we. All right,
That's
just
fine.
can we have someone else just go?
By the way, I love you a lot, Konkona.
We have the next session. In fact,
And you give me the courage to become a filmmaker someday.
Thank you,
All the best.
Konkona. That
Thank you.
know
Thank
you've
you.
made a film with great passion, a keenly observed, a sensitively portrayed film. And here's to a lot more films, lot more successes, and a lot more creativity. And with all my blessings.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, all of you. I'm afraid we couldn't take more questions. We just have a time constraint. Yeah, I know, the governor's way.